Hi everybody, David here with Cascade Components. Today we're going to be going over setting up your sag after the install of one of our links. So the tools you're going to need to get your sag set up properly are a pen and paper. You're going to need a ruler with millimeters and your shock pump. So the first step in setting the sag on your bike with the Cascade Components link is knowing the current sag percentage with the stock link on your bike. Now what is sag? Sag is the amount that your suspension compresses under your body weight when you're sitting on the bike. So what you want to do is find a flat level surface. Something like this concrete floor is great. There's an O-ring on your shock. If you have a Fox shock, you'll need a ruler to measure. If you have a rock shock, the sag gradient should be printed on the shock itself. So what we want to do is push this O-ring up just until it touches the shock itself. And then we're going to swing a leg over our bike, sit on the saddle, and slowly let the suspension compress, lifting our feet just off the ground. Without pushing down on the bike, we can step off, and you can see our O-ring has moved down the shock. We want to measure the gap from the air can to where the ring has been pushed. In millimeters, it's going to be the easiest. So in this case, we're just over 20 millimeters. Looks like about 22. So if you don't have the best memory like me, you're going to want to write that down, 22 millimeters. Okay, now that we know what our sag is with the stock linkage, we're going to get our Cascade Components link installed. As you can see, now we have the Cascade Components link installed on our bike, and now it's time to set our final sag. Because the leverage ratio is higher with the Cascade Components link than it is with the stock link, we're going to have to readjust our spring rate, which means either increasing your coil spring rate or increasing the air pressure in your shock. If you have an air shock, the process is going to be very easy. Now that we have our link installed, we're going to try and match the sag we had with the stock link. In our case, it was 22 millimeters. If you don't have your sag with the stock link written down, that's fine. Most people want to shoot for 30% sag. So to calculate that, what we need to know is our shock stroke length. You can find that on our website. For this particular shock, it's a 60 millimeter stroke shock. 30% sag is our target. So 30% of 60 millimeters is 18 millimeters. So our goal is 18 millimeters of sag, measured from the air can down to the O-ring when you sit on the bike. So let's see where we're at. So again, sit on the bike, lift your feet gently off the ground, stand up, and we'll measure. In this case, we're at 22 millimeters of sag. We want to be at 18. That means we need to add some pressure. So as when you bought the bike and set it up initially, remove your air fill cap, put it in a safe spot, get your shock pump out and attached. Attach your shock pump. Note your pressure. With the Cascade Components link, most riders will need to add about 10% air pressure. It's worth noting that 30% sag is a guideline, but you don't have to stick to it. Start there and then adjust your air pressure or spring rate as needed to get the ride qualities that you like. In this case, let's get to 30% sag. So there's about 10% air pressure increase. Disconnect our shock pump. And another important note is when you're increasing the air pressure in your shock, you need to equalize the pressure between the positive and negative spring. To do that, you want to stand back over your bike, unweight it, start sitting on the saddle, and then you'll hear the air equalize between the two chambers, and it should feel a little bit softer than when you initially sat on it. Now you want to cycle the suspension a few times, and the air is now equalized. All right, so now we're going to measure our sag one more time. You can see we're 18 millimeters from the bottom of the dust wiper to the inside of the O-ring there. So we're there, 30% sag. If you're not at 30% sag, just keep repeating the process as many times as you need to until you get to 30% sag. So now that you're at 30% sag, don't forget to reinstall your air fill cap, go out and go ride. It's also important to keep in mind, again, if 30% sag doesn't feel quite right to you, feel free to play with your air pressure, shock settings, and get the ride qualities that you like by making some adjustments here and there. After all, it's your bike. You can set it up exactly how you want to.